After my clients pay me, the first thing they do is they go through an exercise called Theory of Constraints. And this exercise came from a book called The Goal by Eli Goldratt, which genuinely, if you read this book, you don't have to hire any business guru ever. You see, in this video, I'm going to teach you the skills that most business owners out there benefit from you not knowing, so that you can have the freedom of choice on how you can run your business without being dependent on anyone else.
No, papi, Augusto, una persona que yo estimo, que aprecio, que entro en relación con ella y que al final sigue siendo una persona que conocí, que admiré.
So obviously you're running a coaching business and it feels like you're delivering a lot of value, but it feels like something is missing. Something is not letting you fulfill the potential that you have. Like you feel like you really haven't tapped into that potential. It's like if you turn on a hose and you're waiting at the water, like at the mouth, and like nothing's coming out. So what you do is like you drop the mouth on the floor and you walk back to where you turn it on, figuring out if there's anything wrong with the hose. This is essentially the same exercise, but we're putting it in business. And that's essentially what a bottleneck is. For example, let's just say you're overwhelmed with client calls and you're stuck in fulfillment. So fulfillment right now, it's taking all of your time and energy from growing your business. So you feel very frustrated at the end of the day after having 5 calls in your calendar. You feel drained and you feel guilty because you didn't spend enough time in your business strategy. So how are you going to make it grow? So then you feel frustrated and you start thinking, do I need to do a different funnel? Do I have to hire a content agency? Do I have to do content on LinkedIn or like what's going on? It makes you feel frustrated, like the business isn't moving forward. Like one time I also saw a business owner wanting to just completely fire the sales team. Like I've seen it all. This is the essence of a constraint. The theory of constraint is honestly very simple but a very powerful solution that allows you to understand what's that one thing that's holding you back. In the book The Goal, Eli Goldratt, he emphasizes your weakest link dictates your entire system's success. The cool thing is that with every other business that I've mentored, after we go through this exercise, it's like an aha moment. Instantly, like I tell you, instantly we see increased revenue, faster results from putting in strategic pieces of the puzzle in the business. And honestly, the biggest benefit I see is a reduced stress. It's like a weight off your shoulders because you finally figured out what was that thing, and even better, how to solve it. So this is the 5-step roadmap I give my clients every time they sign with me. It's the first thing they do because it's the first thing that they're gonna get that's gonna give them instant results. And excuse me if I'm reading off my notes, it's just gonna be much easier for me. So it's identify that constraint, exploit that constraint, subordinate that constraint, elevate that constraint, and then finally is just repeat the process. But I'm gonna go over each and every one in detail. The first one is identify that constraint. And what you have to figure out here is what's the most important thing right now in your business. It's going to be probably revenue. So what's that one limiting thing that's limiting your revenue? So for example, if you're a coach, you might have over reliance in manual input. So you're just doing everything manual, maybe. Or maybe you have inefficient lead generation mechanisms. So that's not pulling in enough leads into your business. Or maybe sales isn't closing enough. So that's a operations constraint. When you want to identify your constraint, you want to use data, you don't want to use feelings. Oh, I feel like my sellers are not doing well. No, like look at the data, look at what they're doing, and make sure that you're tracking all those things beforehand so you have enough data to understand what's going on and use data to identify that constraint, not feelings. Number 2 is exploit that constraint. Think of this as what can you control today to improve results immediately. So not anything external in the company, like what can you do right now in your power that can be done today that can fix the problem. So for example, let's just say right now your biggest constraint is lead generation. So rather than thinking about, oh, let me just run ads or let me hire somebody else to help me with lead generation, think about what are you doing right now that doesn't require new resources so that you can improve lead generation. So you exploit the leads that you have already. So for example, are you following up with every single lead that's coming into your funnel? Are you nurturing all the leads with good content that builds trust? Are you using a referral system from your clientele that they can give you better warm leads? Maybe even you can exploit existing networks of your group of people. You know, have you asked for introductions or partnerships? Maybe you could reach out to past clients so that they can buy again from you. Maybe you've improved your offer and you can do a re-offer to these clients. Are you using a lot of content? Are you posting every single day so that you stay top of mind? And the one I currently struggle the most is, are you spending enough time on high leverage activities rather than low leverage activities? So another example I can give you is if your biggest bottleneck right now is maybe people are not closing sales calls, well, what can you do right now to make sure that's fixed? Maybe you can audit your script, or you can actually do game tape reviews with your clients. And I'm very surprised a lot of people don't do this. Little tangent, one of my clients, they were struggling because they were seeing their close rate go down and down and down week after week after week. And I asked them, like, are you reviewing the sales calls? And they said no. I'm like, why do you want to change everything when you haven't even checked what they're doing currently? So have you audited your script? Have you done game tape reviews where you're checking out the sales calls from your clients? Have you done any of that? Are you even tracking KPIs to understand if the closing of sales is what's causing a biggest constraint in your business? Are you optimizing follow-ups? Maybe you're getting a lot of, I need to think about it as an objection. Are you doing follow-ups? Are you training your salespeople to understand how to manage objections? And this is the biggest pitfall I see, is that many coaches want to fix the constraint by adding new tools, hiring new people, running more ads, going from program to program to program, because they don't have the knowledge to understand, to dissect their business and see what's really causing the problem inside of their business. So this is why number 2 is you have to exploit the constraint. Number 3 is subordinate the constraint. So in this case is how can you pool all of the internal resources so the entire business is focused on fixing this constraint? Because again, it's this one constraint that's not allowing you to grow your business. So as an example for a coach, if client success is a constraint and clients are not renewing or clients are dropping off, then customer success is the biggest constraint. So how can you pull in all the team together so that you can fix this constraint? If sales is the constraint, then everything should support how to close more calls. The key insight from this step in the TOC is ensuring that the entire team works together to fix this, because if we fix this, the business does well, and if the business does well, then everyone grows. Number 4 is elevate the constraint. This is when you start thinking about additional resources. If exploiting the constraint is about maximizing what you have, then elevating the constraint is what strategic things you can bring over to eliminate it. So let's just say client fulfillment is a constraint. You're stuck in doing one-on-one calls, you're doing all the onboardings, you're the one managing calls, you're doing content as well, you're running and you're doing a million things, you're wearing 1,000 different hats. But right now, client success is a constraint. Like your clients are not getting the results they paid for. And you've already kind of maximized this. You created SOPs, maybe you hired a VA, maybe you did something to try to alleviate this because you followed step number two, or step number 3, and then nothing's happening. This is when you start doing the elevation of the constraint. So now it's time to do it. So maybe you hire a client success manager. Maybe you introduce new technology like a CRM. In my company, we use Go High Level. My clients, I teach them how to use Go High Level. Or maybe you increase capacity by improving some sort of system. So maybe instead of doing one-on-ones, you start moving into group containers, maybe having 3 clients in a call. Maybe if your constraint right now is sales, so right now I have a client who's closing making $1 million this year. The biggest constraint was sales. It wasn't anything else. It was just sales. So what we did is we ran a campaign to hire a new closer. So we brought in a new high-performing closer so that we can fix this constraint. We did the other prior steps before. So like the CEO was actually running the sales calls, but then that brought another problem, which was they were not being able to focus in the business in so as much creating content, growing the company, getting more leads, etc. So we operated into, okay, you run the sales calls right now, but then we hired a new closer. Maybe during the sales process, maybe you don't have any other leads to get into sales calls. So maybe you run out, or maybe your organic content is maxed out. Maybe the other thing you can do is, have you done a referral system process? Maybe you can create a referral system. And number 5 is repeating the process. That's it. And honestly, let's go back to the example of my client. Sales was the constraint. The closers were the constraint. And it takes time to fix these things. It's not just going to take a week, 2 weeks, a month. I think it took us 2 months to fix the sales process, fix the scripts, fix the frameworks, train the new closer into doing it, and then hire a new closer because that was the constraint. But in that hiring, that training, that onboarding, the CEO of the company actually had to take the sales calls. So that brought in another constraint. We had too many leads. We were making too many leads. So we turned the hose down a little bit and let this process kind of like go on its own, where calendars were full, but it was not overwhelming. At the same time, hiring a new closer, training a new closer so that everything was then ready for the next step, which was new closer is hired, new closer is trained, CEO can take a lot of things off their plate, and now they can focus on other strategy for the business. And I know sometimes it feels like this. Like if you're a business owner, you're a coach, you're the CEO, you're the founder of the company, it feels like you're running a million different things. One, that's normal. And two, you have to run this theory of constraints process, because if you don't, you're gonna run crazy, man. Like you're gonna run like a headless chicken, thinking that you have to fix content, fixing client success, you gotta fix, ads, you gotta fix your messaging, you gotta fix your offer. But all in all, ideally, most of the times you have to fix what's the biggest problem right now, put your energy towards it, and understand that that's the constraint that needs fixing right now. Everything else can wait. So for example, maybe you have inconsistent client acquisition. So that's gonna be a attention generation problem, maybe. And maybe that's a lead generation problem. So maybe shift away from random Instagram posting or random stories that you post to something that's a little bit more strategic and something that I call intentional content. Or maybe you're burnt out from all the operations, which happens very often. If you're a coach below 100K a month, you're doing everything by yourself. So the constraint is operations. So can you create SOPs? Can you hire people? Can you improve the onboarding of your clients so that it's a little bit more automated process rather than you having to handhold them everywhere? Or maybe a constraint that you're having right now is high client churn. And maybe the constraint here is monetization. Maybe the fix here is that you have to build ascension model so that once you sign a client, LTV is much better and you're not getting a high churn that you were getting before. See, every business is different. Every business is a life of its own. But once you acquire this skill and this theory of constraints skill, you're going to be able to dissect your business and put your energy and effort where it matters the most, rather than having to wear 1,000 different hats. And this is why it's important to understand business on a holistic level, rather than just more leads, more clients, more leads, more clients. I call that one-dimensional thinking. If you're a business owner and you want to scale above 50K, 100K, you have to start thinking differently. Because most coaches think they just need more strategies. Instead, what they need is focus. It's like if you have an Honda Civic and you want to go faster. You want to go faster, but there's no fuel in the car, but you think that just because you want to go faster, you have to change the engine. So you buy a V12 Ferrari engine and you put in your Honda Civic. It's not going to make any difference, because at the end of the day, you never had fuel in the first place. So make sure at the end of the day, just to close this off, 3 things. 1, make sure you're doing some KPI tracking for your attention generation. So you're posting all these things. Number 2, the monetization of this attention, like how are you monetizing this attention? And lastly, number 3 is your operations. So how are you combining all these things together so you can have a business that you can track and you can pinpoint everything that's going in the business, so that if something goes wrong, you can run through this TOC process, this 5-test process, and you can fix that. And listen, at the end of the day, you're going to have constraints, but they're not your enemy. They're actually going to show you what's wrong in the business so you can fix it. And if I'm being honest with you, constraints are going to be the point of breakthrough in your business. If you master this art of understanding what's going wrong in your business, you're going to scale. This is why I created an entire training on fixing constraints and understanding what constraints are in those 3 categories. So understanding the attention constraints, understanding the monetization constraints, and the operations constraints. And I created a system called the C-Suite system. It integrates all of these TOC principles so that you can understand how to fix those constraints systematically and predictably. So if you want to check that training out, it's completely free. I'll drop it down below in the description, or it's going to be one of these videos. Hopefully I make this right, but if not, down below in the description, you can watch that training completely for free.